The sound of Ethan's wheelchair wheels against the asphalt echoed between the old worn-out houses. It was a noise he had grown used to, a constant reminder of his reality. At only 12 years old, Ethan had learned to face challenges most people couldn't even imagine. He had lost the use of his legs after an accident while helping his mom Lily sell small items on the streets. Since then, his world had been confined to that wheelchair, but his spirit, that would never be confined. Walking beside him was Max, his loyal companion, a mutt with brown fur and bright eyes. Max was his friend, through thick and thin. In the hardest moments, when the weight of his worries became too much, it was Max who sat next to Ethan, looking at him with a calm expression as if saying, "You got this." And Ethan always believed it. "You know, Max, we're gonna get through this." "I promised Mom she'll get the treatment she deserves," Ethan said, petting the dog, who wagged his tail as if he understood every word. Max was the only one who listened when Ethan needed to vent. Some days, the boy barely slept, consumed by worries about his mom, who seemed to get weaker every week. Since their father had abandoned them, Lily had done everything to take care of him, little Grace, and their youngest sibling, Ben, who was only 3. She had never let them go without. Mom was always strong for us, Ethan thought. Now it was his turn to be strong for her. Despite her illness, Lily was still the heart of the family. Even from her bed, she made sure to stay involved. She would ask how everyone's day went, give advice, and always, with that tired smile, say, "You're my warrior, Ethan. Don't ever forget that." Those words echoed in Ethan's mind whenever he felt down. He wanted to be the warrior his mom saw in him. He wanted to carry the weight of the responsibility that had come too early for him. Between selling candy and doing odd jobs on the streets, Ethan found ways to bring money home. Every penny counted. "Max, have you ever noticed how funny life is?" Ethan continued, as the dog looked at him with his ears perked, paying full attention. "It feels like when things get too heavy, someone shows up to tell you it'll be all right. In my case, that someone is you." Max wagged his tail again, loyal as always. He was the only one who listened to Ethan's conversations without judgment. Max followed Ethan everywhere, like a little guardian, making sure the boy never felt alone. As he rolled his wheelchair down the busy neighborhood streets, Ethan watched the people around him. Adults rushed by, their faces serious, each caught up in their own lives. It was strange how nobody seemed to notice him, a kid in a wheelchair, with a dog by his side, just trying to survive in the chaos of the city. Maybe it was better that way. Ethan was used to being invisible. But no matter how much the world ignored him, there was one thing they couldn't take away from him: hope. Every morning when he woke up, he looked at his mom, who could no longer get out of bed like she used to. Her smile had weakened, but it was still there. And that's what kept him going. Ethan knew he couldn't fail. His work on the streets, selling little trinkets and candy, was what kept his family afloat. He knew Grace depended on him, that Ben didn't yet understand how serious things were, and that his mum, no matter how hard she tried to hide it, was getting sicker by the day. "I promised her, Max. I promised she'd get the best treatment. I'll do whatever it takes," Ethan said, gripping the wheelchair's wheels as he rolled down the uneven sidewalks. Max, as always, walked beside him, attentive to every movement. When Ethan stopped, Max stopped too, as if the two were one. It was a silent but powerful friendship, the kind only those who've been through a lot together can understand. One morning, as Ethan was getting ready for another day of work on the streets, Lily called him over to her bed. She was paler than usual, her eyes sunken and tired, but she still smiled at her son. "You don't have to do this every day, sweetheart," she said, with a weak but firm voice. "I know you want to help, but I worry about you." Ethan held his mother's hand, feeling the weight of her words. "Mom, I'm going to keep working. I promised you'd get the treatment you deserve, and I'm going to keep that promise. I may not have legs, but I still have strength," he said, holding back the tears that threatened to spill from his eyes. Lily squeezed her son's hand with the little strength she had left. "You've done so much for us already, Ethan. Don't wear yourself out too much, please. You're just a kid." "I'm your kid, Mom, and I'll do whatever it takes to see you get better," he said, determined. Max, lying by the bed, lifted his head as if he too wanted to offer his support. This was Ethan's home. It was his mother's love, the presence of his siblings, and Max's loyal companionship that kept him standing, even when his legs couldn't hold him up anymore. Katherine Monroe drove through the city streets in a state of complete despair. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as tears streamed down her face. The weight of guilt, like an unrelenting shadow, suffocated her every thought. Since her son Samuel's death, Katherine had found no peace. He had died tragically in a car accident, and she blamed herself every day for not being there to stop it. Success and money, which once seemed like everything, were now empty, incapable of filling the hole Samuel had left behind. "I failed you," she murmured between sobs as the headlights of other cars passed by unnoticed. She could barely see the road through her tears. The familiar city streets felt distorted, reflecting the chaos in her mind. Katherine just wanted to escape the pain, to escape the guilt, but she didn't know where to go. The feeling that nothing mattered anymore grew stronger by the second. She didn't want to keep going. If I can't be with him, then maybe... Suddenly she missed the traffic lights ahead. She was so lost in her own thoughts that she didn't notice the light had turned red. The sound of a distant horn brought her back to reality just in time. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw a boy in a wheelchair right in front of her, stopped in the middle of the intersection, selling candy at the traffic light. "Watch out!" someone shouted from the sidewalk. Katherine slammed on the brakes with all her might, the car skidding on the wet asphalt. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The car slid, and before it could come to a complete stop, she felt a slight impact. Her heart raced. When she got out of the car, still trembling, she saw that she hadn't hit the boy directly, but she had grazed Max, the loyal dog that was always by his side. Ethan stood frozen, terrified, looking at Max, who was now getting up, a little dizzy but seemingly okay. "Max!" Ethan shouted, desperate, trying to reach his companion. Max, despite the scare, got up and wagged his tail when he heard Ethan's voice, as if trying to reassure him. Katherine ran out of the car, completely disoriented, her heart pounding. Her hands were still shaking as she approached Ethan and Max. "Oh my God. I'm so sorry," she said, almost out of breath, kneeling next to Max to check if he was okay. I didn't see... I was... Ethan, clearly shaken, tried to stay calm. He held Max gently, relieved to see him on his feet. His heart was still racing, but his priority was the dog. "He's fine, just scared," Ethan said, his voice still shaky. You almost..." He trailed off, still processing what had just happened. Katherine stood up, tears once again streaming down her face. The panic of almost causing a fatal accident mixed with the despair that already consumed her. I can help. I'm so sorry," Katherine stammered, still unsure how to handle the situation. She opened her purse, pulling out a significant amount of money without much thought. "Here, please, take this. I want to fix this." She held out the money to Ethan, hoping it could somehow make up for what had happened. That's how Katherine had always handled things, with money. In her mind, everything could be fixed with a financial compensation. But when she looked at the boy in the wheelchair, something unexpected happened. Ethan looked at the money for a moment, then at Katherine. He knew that amount could make a huge difference in his and his family's life. His mother was gravely ill, and he struggled every day to make sure she got the treatment she needed. But as tempting as it was, he knew that wasn't how he wanted to live his life. He had promised himself he would succeed by merit, through hard work, not through handouts, even if they came from a seemingly repentant heart. I can't take this," Ethan said calmly, pushing the money back toward her. Katherine was stunned. "Why not?" she asked, confused, still holding the money. "You need it. I know you need it. Please take it." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart still racing from the scare, but his voice was steady. "Yes, I need it. My family needs it. But I don't want to take it like this. I don't want to get things this way. I work every day to help my mom, and that's how I want to keep doing it. My mom always taught me that we should be honest and fight with our own strength. She always took care of us, even when it was hard. I made a promise to her, and I'm going to keep it." Katherine stood silent, Ethan's words piercing her heart. She was so used to fixing everything with money, compensating for her mistakes with checks and settlements, that she had never stopped to consider that maybe it wasn't always like that. This boy, who was clearly facing struggles she couldn't even imagine, had more dignity and virtue than many of the people she had known in her life of luxury. You're different, she murmured, putting the money back. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry for all of this. Ethan just gave a slight smile, still petting Max, who was finally starting to calm down. It's okay, Ethan said. Just take care of yourself. Sometimes money doesn't fix things. Ethan's simple words struck Katherine deeply. That moment made her realize that some things were more important than trying to fix the past with money. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe there was a path to her own redemption. Katherine stood still for a moment, watching Ethan as he spoke softly to Max, trying to calm him down after the scare from the accident. There was something about this boy, with all his dignity and strength, that deeply moved her. It wasn't just his refusal to accept the money that surprised her, but the way he seemed so at peace with himself, even while facing such a difficult life. Katherine felt a bit lost as she looked at him. "How do you do it?" she asked, her voice soft, almost a whisper, still trying to process everything. "How are you so strong?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mix of exhaustion and determination, but also something Katherine hadn't seen in a long time. "Hope." "I don't really have a choice, Mom," he replied simply. "My mom's sick and my siblings need me. Someone's got to do it. I promised her I'd help her get better, and Max helps me a lot too." He smiled, petting the dog, who looked up at him with gratitude. Katherine felt a tightness in her chest as she listened to his words. She thought of Samuel. He had been a boy full of hope too, with dreams she never realized until it was too late. The weight of guilt began to creep back in, but at the same time, something about this encounter brought a light she hadn't felt in a long time. "I had a son too," she began to say, her voice cracking a bit as she mentioned Samuel. "He was about your age, but Katherine paused, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall again. "I wasn't there for him like I should have been. I pushed him too hard and—" She couldn't continue. The pain of her loss was too strong. Ethan looked at her with empathy, sensing the deep hurt in her words. There was something in the way Katherine spoke that made him understand she too was carrying a heavy burden. "I'm really sorry about what happened to your son," Ethan said gently. "But you're still here. And maybe there's still something you can do to help others. I know it won't fix the past, but maybe it can bring you some peace." Those simple words struck deep in Katherine's heart. She had never thought that helping others might bring her redemption. Her instinct had always been to make up for her mistakes with money, but now, standing in front of Ethan, she began to see that what he offered was something far greater than a quick fix. It was a path to healing. "You're very wise for your age," she said, impressed. "And you're right. I can't change what happened to my son, but maybe I can do something different moving forward." Ethan smiled slightly, still petting Max, who had finally calmed down from the scare. "There's always something we can do," he replied. "My mom always says that as long as we're alive, we have a chance to make things better. I believe that." Those few moments of conversation created an unexpected connection between them. Katherine, who had always felt so isolated and alone, now found herself in front of a boy who, despite his own struggles, seemed to offer her something she had lost: hope. For the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe there was a chance to rediscover a purpose for her life. "I want to help you and your family, Ethan," Katherine said more firmly, determined not to let this opportunity slip away. "Not with money, but in a way that truly makes a difference. Can I meet your mom? Maybe I can help with her treatment. And your siblings. I'd love to meet them too." Ethan was silent for a moment. He hadn't expected such an offer. It had always been him carrying the weight of responsibility for his family. The thought of accepting help from someone he barely knew made him a little uncomfortable, but something in Katherine's sincerity made him reconsider. I don't know," he replied hesitantly. My mom's always taught us to be independent, to make the most of what we have. But if you really want to meet her, I think she'd be happy. She likes talking to new people, even though she's sick." Katherine smiled, a shy and slightly sad smile, but full of gratitude. "I'd love that," she said, her heart feeling lighter. "Maybe by helping your mum, I can also start to heal some of my own pain." And so, with the promise of a visit, the destinies of Katherine and Ethan became intertwined in an unexpected way. The encounter that began in chaos and guilt was transforming into something deeper, something that could change both of them. Ethan, with his strength and virtue, offered Katherine a new perspective on life. And Katherine, in turn, began to see that perhaps her redemption lay in helping those who were still alive and needed her. Katherine drove in silence, the car gliding smoothly through the city streets. Ethan sat beside her with Max curled up at his feet, resting his head in the boy's lap. He had accepted Katherine's offer to drive him home, but the atmosphere between them was calm, almost contemplative. Katherine, still processing everything that had happened, glanced at Ethan occasionally, becoming more and more intrigued. Ethan's serenity, despite his circumstances, made her reflect on her own life. She had spent so many years in her little world, surrounded by wealth, success, and power, that she couldn't imagine another reality. Yet, sitting next to Ethan, she began to realize how superficial her world really was. The boy beside her had no money, status, or power, but he possessed something far more valuable: inner strength and a peace Katherine had never known. Her own life seemed fragile, built on foundations that were now proving to be shaky. As they approached the neighborhood where Ethan lived, Katherine noticed the surroundings changing. The streets, once clean and well-kept, became narrower and more worn. The houses were modest, many in need of repairs. The environment was very different from the luxury she was used to, but oddly, something about this place felt more genuine, more alive. Katherine's world, despite all its shine, seemed artificial in comparison. "This is my house," Ethan said, pointing to a small red brick house with peeling paint and a yard full of scattered toys. When Katherine stopped the car in front of the house, the front doors flew open immediately. Two small children ran toward Ethan, their faces lit up with wide smiles and shining eyes. "Ethan!" they shouted in unison, their faces glowing with joy. The children, Grace and little Ben, practically jumped on him as he got out of the wheelchair, laughing as he hugged them with one arm. "What did you bring us?" Grace asked, looking up at him expectantly. It was as if Ethan's return was the highlight of their day, something they eagerly awaited. Ethan smiled and pulled two small candies from his pocket, something he always made sure to bring for his siblings, no matter how tight things were. Grace and Ben grabbed the candies as if they were the greatest treasure in the world, their smiles widening with gratitude. Katherine watched the scene unfold with a mix of amazement and a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. What impressed her the most wasn't the modest conditions of the house, but the pure and genuine joy the children displayed upon seeing their brother. It was a true happiness, one that didn't depend on wealth or material possessions. In that small home, Katherine saw something she had always sought but never found in her own world, the true essence of life. Lily, Ethan's mother, appeared at the door with a tired but welcoming smile. Despite the clear fragility caused by her illness, there was a light in her eyes, a serenity that radiated from every gesture. As she saw her children together, her expression softened even more. "Ethan, my dear, you're home," she said, her voice soft and filled with love. She slowly approached, leaning against the doorframe for support, and looked at Katherine with curiosity. "And this must be your new friend." Ethan smiled at his mother, then turned to Katherine. "Mom, this is Katherine. She gave me a ride home today." Lily nodded, extending her hand to Katherine, who shook it gently. There was something in Lily's touch that conveyed strength despite her illness. Katherine felt the impact of that simple but meaningful handshake. "Thank you for taking care of my son," Lily said with a gentle smile. "He talks so much about how he wants to take care of all of us, but I know he needs help sometimes too." Katherine was silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had always believed that life was about personal achievements, about success and ambition. But now, looking at this fragile woman, surrounded by her children and the love they shared, she began to question her old beliefs. There was something much bigger here, something that couldn't be bought or achieved. The bond, the virtue of a mother who, even in the face of adversity, had never abandoned the love she had for her children. "You have a very special family," Katherine said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. I've never seen anything like it." Lily smiled, her gaze turning toward her children, who were now running around Ethan and Max, laughing and playing as if the world around them was filled with joy despite all the difficulties. "What we have here is love," Lily said, "and that's all we need. Everything else, life gives or takes away. But love, no one can take that from us." Katherine felt a tightness in her chest. Those words were so simple, yet they carried so much weight. She had always believed that love was in success, in money, in the things Samuel never got to experience because she was too busy building a life that now felt empty. But here, in this humble home, she saw something she had never understood: the true essence of life. The children continued running and laughing, and Katherine couldn't help but smile at how much Ethan was loved by his siblings. That family bond, that unbreakable connection, was something she had never been able to build in her own life. Seeing that harmony made her realize that somehow by helping this family, she could learn what it really meant to live. "I want to help you," Katherine said, breaking the silence, her voice now firmer. "I'm not talking about money, but I want to be part of this. I want to learn from you. I want to do something real." Lily looked at her with kind and understanding eyes. "We all have something to learn, Katherine. Maybe you can teach us some things, and we can teach you others. That's how life is, always learning." In that moment, Katherine knew she was on the right path. For the first time in years, she felt she had something more to offer than checks and bank transactions. There was something much greater to be learned here, and she was ready for it. The days following Katherine's encounter with Ethan's family brought new perspectives for both of them. Katherine found herself increasingly involved, visiting the house often and helping wherever she could. But while she grew closer to Ethan, his mother Lily, and his siblings Grace and Ben, one thing remained constant: the physical and emotional exhaustion that accompanied Ethan every day. Despite Katherine's growing support, Ethan continued to carry the weight of responsibilities on his shoulders. He never wanted anyone to feel obligated to help him, so he didn't stop his daily activities. He kept selling candies and trinkets on the streets, taking care of his siblings, and doing everything he could to ensure the house was in order. Max, his loyal friend, always stayed by his side, offering the kind of silent support that only a four-legged companion could provide. Whenever Ethan felt the exhaustion creeping in, he would look at Max as if the dog was his anchor to the world. "Today was rough, huh, Max?" Ethan said one evening as they made their way home after another long day. Max wagged his tail, walking beside him, always in sync with the boy's pace, or rather, with the wheels of his chair. Ethan pushed his wheelchair along the streets, feeling every muscle in his arms protest in exhaustion. The pain in his shoulders and hands had become constant, but he rarely mentioned it to his mother or Katherine. He didn't want to worry them any more than they already were. He knew his mother had enough on her plate with her illness, and Katherine, well, she was already doing so much. He didn't want to be a burden to anyone. But no matter how strong Ethan was, the physical limitations he faced began to take their toll. His routine, which was already exhausting, was becoming unbearable. The combination of taking care of the house, looking after his siblings, and selling on the streets was pushing his body to its limit. He had no time to rest, and the sleepless nights were starting to affect him deeply. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, while his siblings slept, he wondered how much longer he could keep going. It was on one of those nights that Ethan realized how fragile he was becoming. As he prepared for bed after an exhausting day, he tried to lift himself from his wheelchair to get to the bed, but suddenly, his strength failed him. His hands, so used to doing the work of his legs, gave out. He fell to the floor, the sound shattering the silence of the house. Max ran to his side, barking softly, worried. Ethan felt tears welling up in his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. He didn't want his siblings or his mother to see him like this. He forced a smile for Max, trying to stay in control. "I'm fine, Max. Just a little tired," he said, his voice faltering. He tried to lift himself up again, but his arms had no strength left. The physical exhaustion had finally taken him down. It was the first time Ethan allowed himself to feel the full weight of everything he was carrying. The first time, alone in the dark of his room, he let the pain and exhaustion take over. Katherine, during one of her daily visits, noticed a change in Ethan's behavior. He was quieter, more withdrawn. The energy that always seemed to radiate from him had dimmed. She knew something was wrong. "Ethan, are you okay?" Katherine asked one afternoon as he rested in the yard with Max by his side. Ethan, who always tried to put on a brave face, looked away. He didn't want to worry Katherine, but he didn't have the strength to hide what he was going through anymore. "I'm just a little tired, I guess," he replied, his voice weaker than usual. Katherine knelt beside him and Max, gently placing her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I know you're strong, Ethan, but everyone needs help sometimes. You've been doing so much and She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I can see how hard you're working, but you don't have to do it all alone." Ethan looked at her, finally allowing the facade of strength he always wore to fall. "I don't want to be a burden," he said, his voice trembling. "My mom, she already has so much to worry about. And my siblings, they need me. I promised I'd take care of everything, and I'm going to keep that promise." Katherine felt a wave of empathy and sadness wash over her as she listened to his words. The pressure Ethan was putting on himself was crushing. She knew that if he kept going like this, he wouldn't be able to hold up for much longer. Katherine had always used money to solve problems, but now, seeing Ethan, she knew she needed to do more than just offer financial help. He needed support. Someone who truly understood him and stood by him, not as a benefactor but as a friend. "I admire you so much, Ethan," Katherine said softly. "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. But even the strongest need rest. I want to help, really help. You don't have to do this alone. You." Ethan remained silent for a moment, Katherine's words echoing in his mind. He knew she was right, but accepting help had always been difficult for him. He felt it was his responsibility to take care of his family, and accepting help seemed, in some way, like betraying that responsibility. But at that moment, tired and fragile, he began to understand that maybe, just maybe, accepting help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a necessity. "Maybe you're right," Ethan finally said, a small smile forming on his face. I can't do this alone." Katherine smiled back, a genuine smile full of understanding. She knew this was the first step towards something bigger. It wasn't just about money or resources. It was about supporting each other, sharing the weight of life's challenges and finding the strength to move forward together. The atmosphere in that simple house felt different in the weeks that followed. There was a lightness in the air, a subtle change that gradually took shape, bringing a sense of hope that hadn't been felt by Ethan and his family in a long time. Despite all the difficulties, something was changing, and that change was beginning to grow in each of their hearts. Katherine had become a constant presence in Ethan's life and his family's. She didn't just visit regularly. She also helped care for Lily, making sure Ethan's mother received the right treatment. However, the biggest transformation wasn't in the material help she provided, but in the emotional exchanges and the bonds that were growing stronger between them. Katherine was finally discovering what it meant to truly live, and it was healing her from the inside out. Lily, who had seemed increasingly weakened by her illness, was now having better days. It wasn't just the treatment that was making a difference, but the love, the presence, and the support that surrounded her. Katherine, in a way, had become part of that family, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to be there. There was something in that home that filled the emptiness she had carried since losing Samuel. Ethan, too, began to realize that strength wasn't just about carrying the entire burden alone, but about sharing that weight with those who loved him. He continued working, of course, but with Katherine's help and the emotional support she offered, he began to feel that he wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to rest, knowing that his promise to his mother didn't mean he had to destroy himself in the process. Max, as always, remained by Ethan's side, loyal and faithful, but even the dog seemed to feel the shift in the air. His tail wagged more often as he accompanied the moments of calm and joy that were becoming more frequent in that house. One peaceful afternoon, as Ethan and Katherine sat in the yard, watching Grace and Ben play with Max, Katherine looked at the boy and smiled. There was something different about him. He was still the same determined Ethan, full of responsibility, but there was a peace in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "You seem lighter," Katherine remarked, breaking the silence. Ethan smiled back, nodding slightly. "I think I am. It's strange, but it's like for the first time I don't have to carry everything alone. I know there's still a lot to do, but knowing you're here, that my mom's getting better, it gives me strength." Katherine looked at him, feeling the warmth of his words. For the first time in years, she felt like she was doing something meaningful, something that couldn't be measured by money or success. She was learning through Ethan and his family that the true riches of life were found in connection, shared love, and the ability to help others find peace. "I've learned so much from you, Ethan," Katherine said sincerely. "You've shown me what really matters in life. For so long I thought I had everything, but in truth I had nothing." Ethan looked at her, sensing the depth of her words. "We all learn from each other, don't we?" he replied with a soft smile. "I guess that's how things work. No one does this alone." Katherine nodded, feeling like she was finally beginning to understand the true meaning of life. And in that moment, she realized something even deeper. Helping Ethan and his family wasn't just about giving back or making up for something. It was about finding her own healing. While the pain of losing Samuel still existed, by connecting with this new family, Katherine was discovering that there was room for new forms of love and care. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Grace and Ben ran up to Ethan, out of breath from all their playing. "Ethan!" Grace called out with a big smile. "Promise we'll go for another walk tomorrow? And that you'll bring those candies you always bring?" Ethan laughed, ruffling his little sister's hair. "I promise, Grace. We'll do it tomorrow." Katherine watched the scene with a full heart. The harmony in that family, even amid so many struggles, was something beautiful. There was a purity in their bond, a happiness that transcended financial limitations and daily hardships. Katherine felt a wave of gratitude for having been welcomed into their lives, for the chance to learn something she had ignored for so many years in her own life. Lily, watching everything from her chair in the yard, was also smiling. Even while facing illness, she had never stopped believing in the power of love and togetherness. Seeing her children happy, seeing Ethan finding peace was what kept her strong. And now, with Katherine by her side, she knew that everything would be okay. That night, as Katherine left the house, her heart was full. This was no longer just a visit. It had become a part of her routine, a part of her life. She knew there was much more to learn and to give, but the most important thing was that by helping this family, she was also finding her own redemption. The road ahead was still long for all of them, but now together they were ready to face whatever came their way. Ethan, with his strength and virtue, Katherine, with her desire to help, and Lily, with her unconditional love, had formed a new and unexpected family. Healing was happening, slowly but surely, and that was what truly mattered. The atmosphere in the little red brick house had never felt lighter. Grace and Ben's laughter echoed through the hallways, mixing with the sounds of pots and pans in the kitchen where Lily and Katherine worked together. Ethan sat in the yard next to Max, looking up at the sky as it slowly began to fill with the colors of the evening. There was a sense of calm in the air, as if, finally, the world around them was at peace. The months that had passed since Katherine first met Ethan and his family had brought many changes. Lily was now undergoing continuous treatment, which was significantly helping her recovery. She wasn't completely healed, but there were days when she could get up on her own and walk around the yard, something that had seemed impossible not long ago. The strength of her spirit, combined with the care she now received, was a testament to the power of faith and the support of those around her. Katherine, for her part, felt like a completely different person. The emptiness that had once consumed her was slowly fading. The pain of losing Samuel still lingered, but it was now a quiet part of her life, something she had learned to live with. By becoming involved in the lives of Ethan and his family, Katherine had found a new purpose, a new reason to move forward. "You know, Max, I think we're on the right path," Ethan said, petting the dog beside him. Max wagged his tail as if agreeing, looking up at the boy with his loyal, attentive eyes. Suddenly, Grace and Ben came running into the yard, laughing and playing as they circled around Ethan and Max. They held small candies in their hands, gifts from Katherine, and the happiness on their faces was contagious. "Ethan, look what Katherine brought us," Grace exclaimed proudly, showing off the sweets. "I told you she wouldn't forget," Ethan laughed, feeling his heart warm at the sight of his siblings' joy. He knew how much these little things meant to them. Even in tough times, moments of joy always brought a sense of comfort and unity. Lily and Katherine came out of the kitchen soon after, carrying a tray with a simple but lovingly prepared dinner. They sat around the makeshift table in the yard, joining Ethan, Grace, and Ben. Max nestled by Ethan's feet, as loyal as ever. That night's dinner was peaceful, filled with light conversation, laughter, and shared memories. Katherine, now completely at ease with the family, observed with admiration the bond they maintained, despite all the challenges. This home was unlike anything she had ever known. There were no material riches, but there was something far more valuable: love, respect, and a deep sense of community. "I never imagined I'd be here with all of you like this," Katherine said at one point, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I thought my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer. But you've shown me that life can have a new beginning, that there's always something worth fighting for." Lily, with her calm and motherly smile, nodded, understanding exactly what Katherine felt. "Life always gives us second chances, Katherine," she said, her voice filled with wisdom. "The important thing is knowing how to recognize them when they come." Ethan looked at his mother and at Katherine, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for all that had changed. He knew there was still much to do, but now he wasn't alone. He had a support system, a family that loved him, and a friend who was willing to walk alongside him. "I've learned a lot from you too, Katherine," Ethan said sincerely. "You've helped us in so many ways, but the most important thing you've given us is more than help. You've brought us new hope." Katherine felt tears welling up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude and healing. She had found something she hadn't known she needed: a family. Not the one she had lost, but a new one with whom she could learn, teach, and most importantly, share her life. When dinner was over, everyone helped clear the table, turning the task into another moment of togetherness. Grace and Ben laughed and ran around, and even Max seemed to be enjoying the light and happy atmosphere of the evening. Before leaving, Katherine looked at Ethan, who was playing with Max, and then at Lily, who watched her with kind, understanding eyes. She approached Lily, feeling that somehow everything was falling into place. "Thank you, Lily," Katherine said. "Thank you for showing me what really matters in life." Lily smiled, and with a gentle squeeze of Katherine's hands, she replied, "You already had it inside you. You just needed a little push to see it." Katherine smiled back, knowing those words were true. She had found something precious, and she didn't want to let it go. As she walked away from the house, Katherine's heart felt light. The road ahead was still long, but now she knew she didn't have to walk it alone. She had friends, a new family, and a new understanding of what it meant to truly live. And for her, that was everything.